so involved.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about the book The Housemaid. So in my last video, I talked about all the books that I've read in the last year, and I had mentioned that I was right at the beginning of The Housemaid. So I probably read and finished the book within 4 days, and basically, I'm just going to get into from beginning to end kind of things that stood out to me. And then also, obviously, it's going to be filled with spoilers. So if you have not read the book and are going to read the book, I would suggest waiting. All right. So the beginning of the book opens up with this young girl. She's in her early 30s and she applies for this nanny job. It's like a nanny / housemaid job with this very well-off family. And it's a husband, a wife, and a young daughter. And the wife is the one that interviews her, totally gives off this really sweet, kind impression, and then does end up want to hire the young woman, to be their housemaid / nanny. And once she starts, like literally the very first day that the girl comes in to start, and let me just preface this. There's 3 characters in the book that are pretty prominent throughout, 3 or 4 characters. So the first main character, her name is Millie, and she's the housemaid / nanny that gets hired for this wealthy family. The wife's name is Nina, and the husband's name is Andrew. And then they have a daughter named Cecilia. And then they also have this gardener / landscaper, and his name is Enzo. And so basically, I would say a good majority of like the first third of the book is a lot of the interaction between the wife and the housemaid. So initially when the wife hired the housemaid, she was really sweet, really kind, really energetic, happy to have her there. And so then when she actually starts on the job, things just start to go weird. So the wife ends up being very critical, hypercritical of her, tells her to do something, the housemaid will do the thing, and then the wife will be like, I didn't tell you to do that thing. Why did you do that? So just kind of playing mind games on the housemaid. And so that kind of goes on, I would say, for the good first, the first third of the book, which got a little repetitive to me because I kind of I was like, okay, I get this is happening. Let's move it along a little bit. But a big turn in the book is when the husband and the housemaid, so Andrew and Millie, they do end up getting together and both have feelings for each other. And then the husband confronts the wife and says hey, I'm not in love with you anymore, and I haven't been in love with you for a while, and we need to split up. And at that point in the book, the wife, Nina, is pretty out of control, up and down, seems very unstable and unwell. And then you have the husband who seems very calm. You feel bad for the guy because clearly, this has been his life for years, all these up and down moods from the wife and just all of that. And then they also have, their daughter Cecilia. And so, also trying to be a dad and then, a father, and then he goes to work. I said a dad and a father, a dad, and a husband. And then he also is the main and only money maker, I guess. So he goes into work every day. So you kind of start feeling for this guy, okay, this is kind of a sad situation he's in. It is probably better that him and his wife do split up because of all of the conflict, tension, all the things. So that's what happens in the book. So after the husband confronts the wife, she gets a bag and she leaves. And based upon her past actions, I really didn't think that she was going to leave as easily. She, thankfully her daughter was at a summer camp. And then, so she just grabbed a bag, grabbed stuff and left in her car. And which was very, very shocking because again, all of the way she'd been acting was very, very erratic and, very moody, up and down, screaming, yelling, breaking things, the whole thing. And so when she left, I was like, that seemed a little bit too easy to get away from her. So then the husband and the housemaid, they decide that they're going to, stay in the house. And the husband's being really sweet to his new girlfriend, basically. So while the new girlfriend, which also was the housemaid, Millie, while she was the live-in nanny and housemaid, she lived in this room that was way up in the attic, which was kind of like a little bit of a third level for them. So she stayed up there, super, super small room. There was like a cot, a little fridge, very, very basic, like a dresser, I think. And then the weird thing about that room was that it only locked from the outside. And so she kind of found that strange. She asked for, I think like a key to the room. I think she ended up getting a key to the room. And so that was just kind of a weird situation. Well, whenever the husband and her get together, she ended up, sleeping down on like the second level, which is where like the main bedroom is, the guest bedroom, all of that. And so I think this might have been like the third day or the third night they had been together. He asked her like, hey, I have this big, meeting project thing coming up. I need your help finding some papers or paperwork. So he leads her up to that small attic and he's like, yeah, I started storing all my stuff in here since you're sleeping down here with me now. Like I started using your old room in the attic as a storage area. So I have all these papers and bins and stuff and I need your help to go through all that and find papers. And she's like, okay, like, I don't really work with you. I don't know what you're looking for, but okay, I'll help you. And so when they go up there, she walks in and he shuts the door and then locks it. And so then she's like stuck in there. And that's when like things start to turn. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like maybe the wife the whole time was not the crazy person. Maybe it was the husband that was being like manipulative or like secretive, all of that. Because again, the whole book, you're thinking like, man, this poor guy, he's dealing with this wife that is really up and down, emotionally unstable, screaming, breaking things, all of that. And then all of a sudden the door slams and she can't get out. And you don't know that he's like locked the door. It just says like the door shuts and the door had gotten stuck before. So she tries to like rattle the door and she can't get out. And so she's like screaming and screaming for Andrew and he's not answering. And so then literally the whole night goes by. I think it's like, so the night goes by into the morning. Then he comes back to the door and he's like, hey, like, how's it going? And she's like, well, it's not good. You locked me in here. And he basically tells her like, this is one example of like, hey, you left, or he says that he has to like punish her and lock her in there because she made a mess downstairs. She had pulled off, I think it was a few of his books and left them on the coffee table. And he said that he wanted to punish her and make her stay in there and stack like books, like they're like 3 big textbooks like on her stomach for like 3 hours until she could like that. And that was her punishment basically for like making a mess downstairs. Yeah, so he has like weird, cruel, and unusual punishments. And so basically she's locked in there. And he will not like let her get out. There's like 3 small little water bottles in there. So she's in there for the whole day and the night. And then I want to say like part of the next day or even like a whole second day. And he also has like a camera rigged in there so then he can see if she actually does what he's asking her to do. So then that happens. She does it. She puts the textbooks on her stomach. For 3 hours, he lets her out. So then it switches to the wife's perspective because I was thinking, again, this wife is not well and she left so easily. Like, what's up with that? And so it shifts to her perspective. And then she's like basically having this inner monologue saying how grateful she is to have gotten rid of her evil husband. And then I was like, wait a second, like, maybe this whole thing was an act, like maybe she was like suffering abuse by him. Like, I don't know what's going on. So then you start reading like her account of when she first met him. And I mean, he had barely saw her, I think once or twice, and then asked her to dinner, like randomly. She didn't even know his name, nothing. And then from there, like they start hanging out and go on some dates. And I think within a few months, they're like engaged or married. So that's kind of how it starts. And she had already had Cecilia, her daughter, from like a previous relationship. So their kind of beginning seemed a little sus. I was like, that's a little too soon to like want to date someone and then get engaged and married. Like within that, like within 6 months for sure. So then something similar happens to her where like her roots were growing out. So she like had like blonde hair. Her roots were growing out like a little bit, like an inch or something. And she's like a mom taking care of her kid, taking care of the household while, you know, her husband is at work. And he comes home one day and is saying like, oh, your roots are growing out. And at first in the book, I was like, oh, that's kind of rude. Like, leave her alone. But then she's like, oh yeah, I forgot to go to the hair salon. Like, I'll definitely go like tomorrow or I don't know, this week or something. He's like, okay. Well, they go up to the attic and I forget how exactly he gets her up there. Well, then he pushes her in or like locks her in there and makes her pluck out like 100 of her hairs. Like, again, cruel and unusual punishment. Pluck out 100 of her hairs, put it in an envelope that he already had in there, and then slide it under the door. And of course, this takes her like probably like a day, 2 days, because she doesn't think he's like really serious because he's never acted like that before. And then also in that attic, there's the same mini fridge with like 3 little water bottles. And there's a bucket in the closet if she has to go to the bathroom. It's like, so he's planned this whole thing out. And so then, yeah, so basically he did that to her the first time. She was in there a couple days and then was let out. And then when she gets out, he makes it seem like you've just been really unwell and you need to get some rest and all this stuff because she's been in there for a few days without food and ran out of water. And then he ends up like giving her this sedative or some sort of like drug in a glass of water. Right when she gets out, he like gives her the water and she's now drugged. So then that happens. And so he keeps doing this to her every time she does something that he does not like. Or if the daughter acts up, then like he'll punish her for it. And she'll basically get locked in the attic every single time. So this goes on and on. I'm assuming for like pretty much all the years that they're married. And then there is an instance when right after the first time he locked her up and then drugs her with the water, she comes downstairs and he's like, yeah, you've been really unwell. You need to take a break. You need a rest. So she rests and of course like passes out because she's drugged. Well, she wakes up and then she figures that her husband's at work and then that hopefully someone's like watching her daughter downstairs. Like she doesn't know because again, she was passed out. So she hears like the water on in the bathroom. She like kind of crawls over and she realizes that her daughter is like propped up in the tub and the water is on. So then like the water's filling up. The husband had called the police on the wife, had called the police to give them a heads up that apparently the wife was like unwell and like they should go to the house to check on her, to do like a wellness check. Well, right as like she's like crawling into the bathroom to figure out like what's going on and to save her baby, she's like super drugged. The baby is drugged. And so then the police bust in the door and then they apprehend her and they're just like, yeah, she's drugged. She apparently like drugged the baby too. Like she was trying to take both of them out. But you kind of get the feeling in the sense that like the husband did this. So the husband's like setting her up to look like she's mentally unstable. And she like subsequently from that gets put into like a mental hospital for maybe like 8 or 9 months. And so then each time like she steps out of line, he always like, each time she steps out of line or does something he doesn't like, he always threatens her that I could send you back to like the mental hospital. And they would believe me. And his family's like super rich and they have a lot of like pull in the city that they live in with the police department, with the hospital, like with everyone. So she is threatened by him. And so she ends up just trying to be like the best wife she can be and stay in line all the while being married and stuff like that. So that goes on for years. So then she gets the idea of what if I find somebody else that my husband can prey upon and he really wants to have kids. She does not want to have kids with him, of course. And so she thinks like, okay, let me try to get someone else somehow in here, the housemaid, then live-in nanny. And then I can say like, hey, I really need help cleaning the house up. I really need help watching her daughter, Cecilia. We really need this person. So they end up hiring Millie as the live-in nanny and housemaid. And so she ends up living in that attic. So because she's living in there, she feels, the wife, Nina, feels like, okay, if someone's living in there and someone else is here, he's not going to treat me like that. Like, he won't punish me and be able to put me in the attic anymore. So initially, she hires Millie and doesn't tell Andrew. And then once Andrew like meets her for the first time, I mean, she's like a beautiful young girl, and he apparently is like, okay, like this is kind of odd. Like, I didn't know we were doing this, but okay, sure. Like, and plays it off as if like, oh, that's fine. Like, it's fine that you hired her. Everything's good. So then from that point, the wife basically like, and she describes it as like, lets herself go. Like, doesn't watch her figure anymore. Doesn't watch her, or her like figure. I mean like her weight or her health. Like, she doesn't care about her hair. Like, lets her roots grow out. Like, lets her behavior like kind of be a little erratic. And she basically, and like as you kind of learn from her inner monologue later on, telling her side of the story, it's that she pretended to act erratic and like out of control. She pretended to act like she couldn't, clean up or couldn't care for Cecilia, all the things, because she wanted to be able to get the housemaid in there. And then also wanted the housemaid to start to like hate her, resent her, and then possibly go behind her back and get with her husband, which is like so twisted. But yeah, so she basically had to plan this so that she could escape from the toxic relationship with her daughter and like get out of there and be gone. So then looking back, you realize that the wife was basically acting the whole time and was not actually unwell or unstable. She was just really trying to get the maid against her and be able to get out of there. Going back to Millie's, current day. So she was locked in the room and Andrew opens the door. I think he comes in and gives her like a glass of water. Very same thing that he did with the wife the first time. Comes in, gives her a glass of water, basically tells her like, hey, you can't be acting this way, blah, blah, blah. Well, Millie found pepper spray that the wife had left in that attic when she was locked in there. The wife had stored some pepper spray in there in case, it happened again and she had to like pepper spray the husband. So Millie's in there. She finds the pepper spray, keeps it in her pocket. So then when the husband comes in to basically tell her like, oh, I had to punish you because of how you acted, which was ridiculous. He's sitting next to her, gives her the water. Well, he's sitting so close. She grabs the pepper sprays him in the face, like good. He's, whatever, starts to panic, gets stung, and he goes down to the ground. She runs out, and she has a key to the room. So she like locks the door and then like runs out. Well, so now he's stuck in, so now the husband's stuck in there, and she basically tells him like, oh, you're going to have to stay in there for, I think she said like 3 hours, 5 hours. And you have to hold those same textbooks that you told me to hold. You have to put them on you. And so he ends up having to stay in there for 5 hours. And she also took his phone. I forgot that. She took his phone. So she now has live feed of the camera that he installed in that attic room. So then she, basically is having the time of her life. She goes downstairs, makes some food. She's hanging out. I think she's like watching TV. I forget like what she kind of does that evening. Well, I think the next morning she wakes up and she looks at the camera for the attic, and she couldn't find him. So then she's like kind of panicking. She thinks that he must have gotten out. Well, then she realizes that he was just like under the covers of the cot, kind of like, sleeping. And so she goes back up there and she basically says like, okay, like you did the textbook thing, that's fine, but now if you really want to get out of there, you need to pull out one of your teeth. Which, when she said that, I was like, bleh. That is so like intense and very cruel. And so he's like, heck no, I'm not doing that. Like, let me out of here, blah, blah, blah. Like, rightly so. But kind of learning like what he had done to the wife previously for all those years, and then he was going to try to do now to like Millie. I was glad that he was locked in there, and I really wish that Millie would have just like called the police and then showed them the footage of her being locked in there and the way he was acting. But she took matters into her own hands and started telling him like, yeah, you need to pull out one of your teeth if you're going to be basically getting out of here. So then it kind of flips back to Nina's perspective, the wife, or like ex-wife, I guess. So she goes to like pick up her daughter from the summer camp that she was at, and kind of all along, the landscaper Enzo, he got to know what was happening to her, but the wife never wanted to like get him involved. So she was like, don't say anything, didn't go to the police, don't do anything about it, nothing. Like, I'm going to plan to get out of here, and I'm going to get out of here, and it's going to be fine. So he was like basically her friend throughout the entire thing, and you, that kind of explains it too, because he was basically at the house doing yard work every single day. And you kind of think like, okay, there's only so much work that you can do. But then like learning that he was like her friend and got along with her really well and was actually like rooting for her to get out of the situation. I'm like, okay, that made sense. So he basically helps her like save up money, helps her get like, I guess like she gets like 2 P.O. boxes with like cash in one, passport, birth certificates, I think. And there was like cash in another one or something. So she's basically plotting of like how she can like leave as well. Okay, so Enzo is still doing the landscaping at the house and realizes that neither Millie or the husband Andrew have left the house in like 3 days. So Enzo doesn't, know what's happening. He doesn't know the husband's like locked in the attic and that Millie's just chilling in the house. So he kind of panics and calls the wife, the ex-wife, and is saying like, hey, I think you really need to go back and you need to help her escape or get out of there because I haven't seen their cars move and the light is on up in the attic, which is a signal that like, someone's in there, someone's locked in there. And so he ends up convincing her to go back to the house. So Enzo stays with the daughter. After they pick her up from summer camp, the wife goes back to the house to basically help Millie escape or confront Andrew. So she has the key to the house. She goes into the house and she's like calling out for Millie and Andrew. No one's answering. And so, okay, it's like, all right, did Andrew like get out of the attic? Like, where's Millie? What happened? So then, Nina, she's like looking around, can't find anyone. She goes up to the attic. And the door is locked, but she has a key. So she unlocks the door. And in my head, when she did this, of course, I didn't know. I'm like, I don't know where Millie was. I don't know what was happening. But whenever she opened the door, I'm like, great, Andrew's going to get out. He's going to throw Nina, the ex-wife or wife in there and lock her in there. So, and then he's going to like run down and like kill Millie. That is literally what I thought. So I'm like, oh my gosh, no. But when she opens the door, Andrew's just like laying on the floor. And so then I was like, okay, is he dead? Like, what happened? So yeah, he ended up pulling out like 5 teeth, which is like insane. So, and I don't know what his actual cause of death was. It might have been like starvation or like dehydration or something. But apparently maybe a couple more days had passed already. But yeah, so it was like pretty much a gruesome scene. But he'd already passed away. So then Nina, the wife, is like, oh my gosh, what happened here? And then Millie comes and like confronts her. And Nina's like, I get it. Don't like explain anything to me. Just get your stuff and leave. And Nina's like, people in this community already think that I'm like a crazy person. They're going to blame this murder basically on me for being mentally unstable. So she's like, I have a reason, to have done this, but you don't, like, they don't know that you don't. So or they don't know that, yeah, they don't know your involvement in this. So she's like, before anyone gets here, get your stuff, leave, and I'll take care of this. So Millie takes off, and then Nina calls the police. So Nina calls the police, they get there, they assess the situation, realize he's deceased, and then Nina is trying to explain to the officer what happened. And you can totally tell, it's like, your story doesn't make sense. How did he like accidentally get locked in the attic? And then how did he pass away? And why did he pull out 5 of his teeth? Like, that makes no sense. But then the officer says, like, oh, I knew your husband. He was engaged. I think he said engaged. He was engaged to my daughter, Kathleen. And so you do remember, or I did remember, like at the very beginning of the book, it said that Andrew, the husband, had previously been engaged to some woman, Kathleen. So then the whole book, I'm kind of thinking like, okay, did she like get murdered or like what happened to her? Anyways, so at the very end of the book, when Nina's talking to the officer's like, yeah, I knew your husband. He was engaged to my daughter, Kathleen. And after they had split, she like left town, and it took her years and years to like trust any man again, the whole thing. So then the officer kind of says like, yeah, I'm gonna basically say that he got locked in there and then died from dehydration, I think it is. So you can kind of tell he understands that Andrew wasn't a good guy and probably did harm Nina, harmed Kathleen, all the things, and he's just dead, and let's move on. So all that happens. And I'm just like, okay, because I was like, definitely Nina's going away in handcuffs, or she's going to the mental institution or a mental hospital, because there's no way she's getting out of this. But then, thankfully, the officer like had already known Andrew and suspected that he wasn't a good guy. And so then fast forward to the funeral memorial service. You know, Andrew's mom and dad come up and they talk to Nina. And of course, they're not dumb. Like, they're going to assume that she had some part to play in this. And the mom makes the craziest comment to her. And because 5 of his teeth are missing. So, 5 of his teeth are missing. So he has his mouth like shut, which I guess when you die, I guess they do close your mouth. I don't know. So he's lying in his casket. The mouth is closed, and the mom, comes up to view and then comes over to Nina and is like, yeah, I always talk to him about his hygiene and how he needs to brush his teeth. And I think it's like keep his teeth white or something. Oh gosh, I have to find it. So the mom, her name's Evelyn. Her and the husband walk over to Nina, and they're basically like, the husband's like, hey, anything you need, let us know. And then the mom kind of starts to say like, yeah, they told me that how they found him, that he was like missing teeth or something. And so in that moment, you think she's going to confront Nina and be like, you totally did this. But instead she says, Evelyn, the mom, she's like, I always told him how important dental hygiene is. I told him he had to brush every night, and when he didn't, there would be a punishment. There's always a punishment when you break the rules. And then Nina's like, what is she saying? And then the mom goes, if you don't take care of your teeth, she continues, then you lose the privilege to have teeth. Andy knew that. He knew that was my role. When I pulled out one of his baby teeth with pliers, I thought he understood. So then you realize, like, that is how the mom punished him. Like, the mom must have locked him somewhere or had him, like she said, like, she pulled out a baby tooth because he wasn't brushing his teeth. Like, I'm like, what is wrong with this family? So, yeah. So then you realize, like, that is how they were raised. Or that's how Andrew was raised by his mom. Apparently not his dad, but his mom. And he was given these cruel and unusual punishments. And she honestly is okay with it. She's like, it's done. Like, I guess I don't care. I guess she was saying she doesn't, like, care that he's, like, I don't know. I'm just like, you're the mom. Like, how could you say that? But yeah, she was like, yep, I told him basically if he didn't brush his teeth, he's going to lose the privilege to have teeth. And I'm like, what the frick? So that's basically how it ends. No, I'm just kidding. After the funeral and that weird interaction, it flips to Millie's perspective because you want to know, like, okay, where'd she go? What's going on? So it starts a conversation she's having with a woman. And then you realize that the woman's hiring her to, like, be a housemaid, be, like, I think a live-in nanny as well. And the woman is saying, yeah, you came really highly recommended by Nina. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot something. Okay. This book is, like, so involved. Maybe it was like over 300 pages. Yeah, definitely. I think it was like 325 pages. So I really should have, like, kept better notes along the way, but there was so much going on. Anyways, I forgot to say this. So Millie, when she was, like, first getting interviewed by the wife at the very beginning of the book, Millie was worried that she wasn't gonna get the job because she had just got out of prison. She had served, I think, like 10 years in prison or something. And once Nina would run the background check, like, she would know that she had been in prison. So that was actually one of the reasons why Nina hired Millie, because she knew, like, okay, I'm going to dip out of here with me and my daughter, and I need to know the person that is going to come in next and be with my husband, that she is going to be able to, like, fend for herself and take care of herself. So that's, like, the reason she ended up selecting Millie to be the housemaid. Fast forwarding kind of more to the last third of the book, Nina's having, like, inner dialogue, and she's basically reflecting on, yeah, I had to, like, pick Millie as a replacement. And then she goes into, I know she served time, but the whole book, you don't know what Millie served time for. And so it's like, okay, like, is this, like, related? Like, does somebody know someone from prison that knew her or something? And Nina reveals that Millie had served time in prison for murdering somebody. And so basically Millie had overheard or, like, came across one of her friends being taken advantage of by this, I think they were in college or something, by this other college guy. So she had gone into the room and was, like, looking around for something and found a paperweight and started beating the guy with the paperweight. And he ended up, like, passing out and then dying. And which is, like, also very, very intense. And throughout the trial and stuff, they felt like that was, for lack of a better term, like, overkill. Like, that was too much, that she could have, like, hit him once or pushed him or done something and that he would have stopped. But she, like, took it too far, basically, is what they were saying. And so she ended up going to prison, I think, for 10 years. And so then, at the very end of the book, when Millie's, like, interviewing with this other woman, and this woman's like, yeah, Nina basically recommended you for this job. And Millie's like, oh, crap. Well, like, Nina knows I served time. Like, clearly this new lady is going to do a background check and realize I've been in prison. So she kind of gets a little bit nervous. But then the lady is, like, playing with the kitchen knives, or, like, grabs a kitchen knife, trying to suggest, like, yeah, I really would love for you to work with us. I really think I could use your services, blah, blah, blah. And Millie's like, okay. And I forget, there's something to indicate that, like, she, the new lady, is, like, being hurt. Oh, yes. Okay. So then, yeah, so in their conversation, she's like, yeah, I really think I can use your services. And on the, like, left arm of the woman, you can see there's, like, bruising and stuff. And then Millie kind of understands, like, oh, like, you want me to live here as the housemaid and help, like, get rid of your husband or help you get out of the situation or something. So then, like, at the very end of the book, she accepts the job and she's like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll work for you. I think I can definitely help you out. And that's how the book ends. Crazy. So I feel like this book was there was a lot of, like, plot twists and, like, a couple things I, like, I don't kind of get. I don't know. Like, At the beginning, they made the daughter, Cecilia, kind of seem a little bit like
Evil?
and then like really she ends up just like being this normal girl at the end and is like I don't know. It was just very interesting. Another part was that Andrew, the husband, apparently speaks like fluent French. And then the landscaper guy also, you think he can only speak French because he was like kind of playing an act. You think he can only speak French. So then I'm like, why doesn't the husband talk to the landscaper in French if they both know French? And then it like kind of becomes like an obsolete detail, like doesn't end up mattering in the end. So I'm like, why was this like, I don't know, maybe like I'm not getting it, but I was like, that doesn't seem like that makes sense. That is The Housemaid. Overall, I think it was a really good book. I would probably rate this like 4 out of 5 or even like a 5 out of 5. I don't know. It was like such a good book and definitely had a lot of twists. I think the punishment piece of them getting like the women getting locked in the attic was like a little much for me, but it was definitely like a psychological thing, like a psychological thriller where you're like, okay, is the wife like unwell? Like what is actually happening here? And gets you like kind of doubting some of the characters. So overall, I think it was really good. I think I would give it a 4 out of 5. There is also a sequel. Wait, what is it when there's like 3 of them? Trilogy, I think. There is another book. I'm like, where's my phone?
That's what I'm recording on. LOL.
There is a second book. I think it definitely has Housemaid in it. And then there's actually a third book that is coming out this year. So we have The Housemaid's Secret is the next one. The second one. And the third one I think is called The Housemaid is Watching. Those are the 3. And apparently it's actually like it isn't like the second one, from what I'm told, doesn't like pick up right at the end of this. It's her like at a new job, basically at like, I think it's still doing housemaid work, but she's at like a different residence helping a different family. And then the third one, I have not like followed, I haven't read anything about it yet, but I just know that it's coming out this year. So if you want to read like a trilogy and you want to like have, a few books to read, I would definitely recommend starting this. And then at least you have like the second and third one to go. And I really like Frieda McFadden's writing. I've read a couple of her books and really enjoyed it. They are a little intense. There's some pieces of it that are a little bit more intense. Maybe it's like a little gruesome or a little bit like cruel. So if you don't like those things, maybe they're not for you. But I would say like give them a try at least and see if you like them. If you've read this book and you would like to chat more about it in the comments, feel free to leave a little comment. And also, if there are any other books that you want me to do a review on, or that you want me to read, or that you think would be a good thriller for me to dive into, definitely leave those down in the comments as well. All right, thanks so much. Love you. Bye.